Hi, Gaye DeRusso with the Majestic rider. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different gaits because it can be confusing because there's so many different names of gaits. There's so many different breeds of gaited horses, okay? And when those certain breeds do a gait, a lot of times they call it a different name, so it gets very confusing. What I'm going to talk about is everybody should have a trail walk. That is just a slow walk that every regular trotting horse and every gaited horse should be able to do. It's just a slow 4-beat walk. They call it a trail walk, but it's also called the dog walk. And if you have a walking horse with a big stride, they sometimes will call it a camel walk because you're moving back and forth a lot because that horse has such big stride, it's pushing you back and forth in the saddle. They're all going the same speed, though, and they're all 4-beat. So if you hear trail walk or dog walk, that's the same thing. If you hear camel walk, it's the same speed. It just means there's a lot of motion in the saddle because the horse is overstriding a fair amount. Your next gait should be a flat walk. That's just a faster trail walk. In a trotting horse, you would call that either a working walk or you could call it an extended walk depending how much your horse is moving out, okay? But in the gaited world, we call it a flat walk. Some gaited horses don't know how to flat walk, but most of them can all do it. And that's the foundation for the rest of your gaits, so you should get it and make sure you have a 4-beat faster walk, which again is a flat walk. Some horses will have overstride when they do it. Some won't. Some people will fight with you and say, well, they have to have overstride to do the flat walk. That's up to you. We're not showing here. But it's the speed that we're talking about. So with the flat walk, you usually get some back and forth motion in the saddle. The horse's head goes up and down. Doesn't matter what breed. Most of their heads will go up and down. But the more overstride they have, usually more head shake that they will have. Or the more that they're kind of, their head is a fulcrum, they can have more head shake. So it depends on the horse, but again, some will shake their heads more than others, so some will shake it a little and some will shake it a lot. That's your flat walk, okay? So if you have a gaited horse and they're calling it a different name, but it's the speed of the flat walk, just know it's a flat walk. It's the same kind of thing. So 4-beat footfall, head shake. Then if you go faster, horses will do different things. If they're on the lateral side, they might be able to do a running walk, okay? The running walk is a 4-beat footfall, does have overstride, does have head shake, okay? And you'll get a little bit of that back and forth motion. And that's when they talk about the glide ride with the walking horses. That's what they're doing. They're doing that running walk. And that's why they want the overstride, because it does make them glide. But again, going real slow, some of them do that camel walk. So you got to watch that horse, and that camel walk's not fun. So if you're going to go slow at all, you want to make sure they don't do that. Your running walk is the same thing as your flat walk, except it's faster. But it's the same footfall, head shake, but your horse is going faster, okay? So think in the trotting world of a collected trot and a working trot or an extended trot. Same gait, still a trot, but one's slower, one's faster. Okay, and I'm trying to keep it simple, so don't start fighting over, well, that one's collected and this one's not collected. Whatever. We're keeping it basic for people who are learning. So your flat walk and the running walk, pretty much the same, except your running walk is faster. And because it's faster, the horse shakes its head faster and its head won't go as deep, okay? But very similar gaits. Now, the next lateral gait should be your saddle gait, okay? So some walking horses can do that. Some can't because nobody's trained them. But that's usually what the Rockies do and what the mountain horses do and the Icelandic and so many others. But it's your saddle gait. Now your saddle gait is 4 beats, but it's a different kind of gait. There's no head shake. Their croup, the top of their butt right here, goes up and down because their hocks are moving up and down like a piston, and that makes their tail bounce. So some will have more up and down motion than others. In the hindquarter. You shouldn't have up and down on the saddle. It should just be in the hindquarters. A lot of up and down, to me, is not fun. I don't like it. It's a lot of jiggling, and I have a bad back, so I like it smooth. So I'd rather get it slower and lengthen the stride a little bit than having too much up and down motion. In the saddle, you kind of feel a wiggle back and forth. In some horses, it might be completely smooth. So say you're on a Peruvian or a Paso Fino doing this similar gait, different name, but they're doing a saddle gait. They're not going to have a lot of motion. They're going to come down in their pasterns more. I don't know if we're too close, but they're going to come down here more. It's going to give more shock absorber, and they're going to have a little bit more of a stride, so it's not as bouncy, okay? Now, again, if you ride a Peruvian and then you ride a Rocky and you're like, how can that be the same gait? It's not as smooth. It is. It's just the horses are built different and they move differently, but it's the same 4-beat footfall with more hawk action and croup going up and down and that tail bouncing. But again, some are smoother than others, but you can make it smoother. So that saddle gait, okay, will be the same as those intermediate gaits in the other breeds that are lateral, and it has different names, okay? So it can be called a saddle gait. It can be called a slow rack. It can be called a saddle rack. It can be called a slow tolt, and so on they go. So I'm not going to name all the names because I can't even remember myself. Now, those gaits are going to be very similar to the rack, okay? Both the saddle gait and the rack are 4 beats, no head shake, a little bit more hawk motion, and the tail usually comes up and down, okay? And they can have some overstride, but it's not the overstride that they have with the running walk, okay? So the saddle gait and the rack are the same footfall, except the saddle gait's slower, the rack is faster. So same thing like the collected trot or a jog and an extended trot, okay? So same, they're both trotting, except one's faster than the other. So the saddle gait and the rack are the same, but one's faster than the other. Now, someone's going to say, you didn't cover the speed rack, so I'll cover that. What's the speed rack? Well, it's even faster. Those are the horses that go like 30 miles per hour, okay? So those people usually get offended if you're like, your horse is racking. They're like, no, it's speed racking, okay? Everybody has their thing. So we got the saddle gait, the rack, speed rack, all the same footfall, no head shake, tail might bounce up and down if they're using that hind quarter, more like a piston. And with all those gaits, it's speed. So saddle gait's your slowest, the rack is in the middle, and then your speed rack's at the end. That's the fastest. And again, each horse will do it different. So some you'll get more wiggle in the saddle. Some horses you'll just be sitting completely still. If some of the horses are getting close to a step pace, you'll feel a little leaping motion in there, okay? Because as they're going super fast, sometimes they're more suspension as you're trying to go towards that speed rack. The horses are actually doing a little bit more of a step pace, and it's a little bit more of a swing. But I won't get into that because I've probably already confused you, okay? So the flat walk and the running walk, very similar, just running walk is faster. Saddle gait and rack, very similar, rack is faster. Rack and speed rack, very similar, except the speed rack is faster. Okay. Now let's go on the diagonal side of the gaited spectrum. You got a fox walk. What the heck is a fox walk? The phone died, so I had to change things out. So I was talking about the fox walk. The fox walk is very similar to a foxtrot. It's pretty much a slower foxtrot. So similar footfall. So right front, then the left hind, then the left front, and then the right hind, okay? So your fox walk, which I was kind of doing with Bender when I was riding him around, it's a walk, but you'll feel it kind of feels just a little trotty to it, okay? So you'll feel that back end. You're like, are they going to trot? No, they're just walking. So it kind of feels like they're half trotting and walking. But it's a fox trot, but it's slow. And then as you speed up and add more speed, that horse will go into the fox trot if you keep the correct speed. So with those gaits, you usually have some head shake going up and down. The tail will usually wave a little bit more, and you'll feel a little bit of this in the saddle. Now again, there's different names with the different breeds. So the horses that are diagonal, like the Marchadors, and there are some other breeds that are diagonal, again, they can give them different names to it. And even the Peruvians and Pasos, if they're on the trotty side, they can call it a different name, okay? And I don't remember all the names, but you can look it up. There's so many. With the gaits, again, there's lateral and diagonal, but you have to know that there's different names for all of them, but it can get confusing because many of them are very similar, okay? So I showed you all the ones that are similar. Now I'm going to say a little bit more which ones are different. So your running walk is not the same as the saddle gait, because your running walk is overstride and head shake, and the saddle gait doesn't have as much overstride and doesn't have head shake. They stay straight, and the gait actually feels different, okay? But some horses can do both of those gaits. Those are both lateral gaits, but they are different from each other. Then you have your foxtrot, okay? Your foxtrot is going to be different than your running walk and your saddle gait, because your foxtrot is diagonal. So it's still a 4-beat footfall, but it's going to be different. Some of them have a little overstride. They do have a head shake, but they're moving differently, and their tail usually sways back and forth like that, okay? Now again, it depends on the breed, because some of them, like the Peruvians, their tails aren't going to move as much even if they do that gait. You just have to know it is very confusing, but many of the gaits are similar. If you have a horse that's pacey, you're going to go for those lateral gaits, and you might be able to get all those lateral gaits I said. If you have a horse that's trotty, going towards the trotty spectrum, so towards your foxtrot, is going to be much easier. Some horses overlap because they are pacey and trotty, and you can get all those gaits if you want. But in the beginning, when you don't know what you're doing, pick 3 speeds, and that's what you work at. So in the beginning, I just pick the flat walk. I get that horse really good at it. Then when I'm in the arena, I go faster and see what it does. If it can go faster, then I know it can do a running walk if it's keeping that same footfall. If as I go faster, it shortens up and it starts doing a saddle gait or foxtrot, then I know that's the next gait that's easiest for the horse, and that's what I'm going to work on instead. So unless somebody tells me they want something specific, I pick the easiest gait for that horse, and that's what you should do if you're new to this. Pick the easiest gait. It doesn't matter if you have a foxtrotter. If it's lateral or pacey, go for the saddle gait. It's a smooth gait, and it'll be much easier to get than the foxtrot. If you have a walking horse and it's really trotty, go for the foxtrot, because it'll be much easier to get. And then as you get more educated, then yes, you can try and get the other gaits. But when you don't know what you're doing, I wouldn't make it harder on yourself. It's so confusing anyhow. So just start with those things, and just know that those gaits that I mentioned, some are very similar to the others, although they have different names and everybody fights over everything. And the other thing I think I forgot to say is with the tolt, which is the Icelandic, when they do a slower tolt, that's like your saddle gait. When they do a tolt, a regular tolt or a faster tolt, that's going to be towards your rack. But again, each horse is different, and some of those Icelandics, they're also doing that flying pace, which I do not think is the most comfortable gait. I don't want to fly at pace. I want to do a rack, so if they can do a rack, yes. But I want a smooth I want a smooth ride. I don't even want a little bit of this bounce in there, okay? So just know each horse will have its different thing, but many of them are very similar. So don't get wrapped up in it. Don't get confused. You can come back to this video if you do, but I'll also write an article on it, because people will fight with you about it, and just let it go. It's no big deal. Even if you said the wrong thing, whatever, just let it go, move on. As you get educated, you'll figure it out, and you won't offend as many people, because for some reason they all get offended when you say the wrong thing. I won't so much. I might correct you, but I'm not going to get offended over it. All right, but I hope that helps you with the name of the gaits.